today, as you see, is August 30th. We're going to start uploading these. That's another question. Stacy, so you're organizing these weekly Friday meetings, is there a way we could get the recording from you so we could put it in the Google Site repository, the Read Assistant or something?
Yeah, so all of those recordings, I don't know. If you can access the meeting, you should be able to see files at the top. And if you can't, then we'll send them out. I'll get the links and send them to you separately.
Okay.
That's a function of Teams.
Okay.
Stacy, Doug's already offered to do that, so.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
So I told him no, but I'll tell him yes now.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, and then I mean, actually, it's just us here, Steve. So you guys will make a decision. Stacy and Steve will make a decision at the end of this project, come January, if you want to keep the Google site, I mean, I imagine we'll keep it, but for now, but when you go to Clearinghouse 2.0, you may not want this task force stuff out there for that big global one that publishes. So as you notice on the front page, we have the date, August 30th. And then what I'm trying to do so you can tell the difference in the stack of PowerPoints is I give you a new good morning or welcome or something like that. So each one's different for each slide deck for each meeting. So do we have any new members or alternative members that are joining us today? And if you could, if this is your first meeting, introduce yourself and tell us what institution you're with. And you can also put it in the chat. Okay, so let's recap. We're going to do a recap of last Friday's meeting quickly and briefly. And then today, as we established last week, today's topics, we're going to talk a little bit about the ACE military guide system and then the test system usage. We're going to share, we think it's worthy to have that conversation about the ecosystem, the hub of this framework, this program. Then other program resources, ambassador talking points. And that was your homework assignment from last week. You all looked at the overall credit for prior learning ambassador talking points that were created last October at the convening. Then we're going to go in and review real quick the Google site parking lot topics and then make our decision for what we want next Friday's meeting to be about. So real quick, a recap of last week's meeting. We talked about the terminology around MCPL program versus the framework, or is it an initiative? Program's going to be difficult. The point was raised by Allegra that it's going to be difficult for some institutions because they see programs as programs of study versus a veterans program or a certain student target population specialized program. So she came forth with some great suggestions, and Allegra, thank you. And that is maybe we need to call this framework or CPL process, things like that. So let's spend a little bit of time on that. Does anybody have a preference of what would like for this to be? And Stacy, you could share possibly that it is CHE's intent that every institution have a program, but it's not the intent for the institutions. Your policies and practices will support the statewide model guidance.
Right. I guess that's kind of where we trip up over the language, right?
Yeah,
but the hope is that, yes, we can help all institutions move forward in their policy and practice with CPL, however we call that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do think I like the term framework better than program. I agree with Allegra. I don't think we should use program.
I like framework as well. Process, to me, framework is like the model guidance. Here's the frame that the Indiana institutions will work within. However, every institution still has the total authority of what you accept for credit based on your institution's policies. So process to me is a piece of that. It's kind of like when we get to I've got a slide here that I'm going to share when we talk about all the different entities and tentacles and arms that come with CPL programs or frameworks. Anybody else have any thoughts on that, or you like framework? Okay. Thanks, James, for putting that out there. MCPL guidance, that's good. Okay, then there was some discussion around a need for these coordinators, administrators, managers. And so Dallas has got a few that he will share. And Dallas, do we want to do a full slide on these next meeting, or do you want to just put them out there in the Google site as a resource?
Yes, I'm working on putting them out in the Google site because then I can put the full description and the recommendation. There'll be a PowerPoint slide on or in the implementation plan. There's a page that gives a brief description of what a coordinator might be, but I'll show what others are doing and what they're advertising.
Okay. Okay.
This might be a good spot to just ask this question. If we can please do a quick poll, how many folks have been to the Google Sites page? If you would just raise your hand, the emojicon, and let us know. Okay, good, good, good. All right, perfect. Excellent. Okay. So there are a few of you that haven't had a chance to do that yet. That's okay. But jump out there soon because we just keep adding more and more stuff in there. For those that have been out there, how'd you like it? Thumbs up, thumbs down. There is no thumbs down, I don't think. Okay. Maybe a face of, oh, I don't know.
Or wow.
Yeah, wow. Okay, good. All right. Thank you for indulging me on that quick poll there.
I've got a quick question for the MCPL coordinator jobs. Are we thinking that it's kind of like, sorry, whomever sent out this ambassador thing for today? It seems like the same thing. Am I mistaken in that?
No, no, you're not, Lori. It is one of the same. The ambassador was when we were looking at last year with the big statewide task force and tackling some other work groups about data collection and the clearinghouse and the policy, the model policy. So all of them spent just like you all are this summer, and 2 months every weekly meetings talking about how to advance, except that the difference is you're looking at a specific student target population. But once you're in this group, you become your ambassador for the framework at your institution, like a go-to person. And also we felt it was critical that everyone had the same talking points. So it would help with the terminology. Some people, talk about it as transfer credit. Some don't see it as credit for prior learning. Some are only doing based assessments and not doing experiential learning. So we felt the talking points for the first time, would get everybody across the state about this is what it is, and this is what it is for Indiana. And those were developed with all those people. It was vetted through a lot of folks then. Today, I think when we get down to this on the agenda, I'd like to talk, spend time with each of you about what do you think, how we could create something similar just for the military.
Okay.
But yeah, the coordinator is the one that's going to be that go-to person, probably the name and the phone number and the email on your military page with your institution's website. Any other thoughts around that? Okay. Then we also finalized the implementation guide phase 3 evaluation stage. So the previous meeting we did phase 1, phase 2, and then we discussed the evaluation stage last week. We did spend time around the institutional sharing topic about how we could all share. This is where we discovered that not everybody may have may use the ACE military guide, but they're not uploading transcripts. They're using the test system. And so that we talked about a few things around that. Other avenues to do institutional sharing with your program in comparison to other Indiana was possibly taking this group and joining the CCME and the ACME Mid-South Region Network Circle. They're having a meeting coming up, I believe, in November. Dallas, is that right? Or And mute.
September 12th, and it is in Louisville.
Right. And this is a great opportunity to share what you're doing at your institution in comparison to how other institutions are administering similar program or framework. And then we talked about how the Indiana Google Site repository for Indiana could serve as that purpose as well. Then we went into the build out discussion on other program resources, which is where we talked about, let's take a look at this, the ambassador briefing talking points, which we will do today and work through that. We walked you through the parking lot topics. And so there was a suggestion, the need for military cultural awareness, and we think we might have found a couple tools that we're going to add to that site to help with all of that. And so much as, you know, how do we serve and how do we understand that military training is education? And it does have a space in higher ed, in the traditional type of educational format. So that was the recap from last week.
Somebody had a question in the chat about the September 12th.
Hey, Dallas, can you share that? Do you have a link that you could probably put in?
It's already, the link's already on the Google site. So if you jump out there, you'll see it. It'll take you to their website and their registration.
Okay.
But I'm going to share it in the chat again, just to,
Yeah.
that way they don't have to do it. Okay. Give me a second. I'll need to pull it off of there.
While you're doing that,
yeah.
What I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about, we learned last week from a few of you that while you may look at the ACE military guide recommendations, you're really uploading and using, many of you, the TEST system, which is a college source product. So for those of you that are, I just think it would be beneficial to us and CHE. Just the reasonings was TEST. Did you have TEST before you started using the military guide, or I mean, because you said it was a duplication of efforts. I just want to gain a better understanding around that, and then also find out if anybody is engaged with the transferology, which is another career source product around military training. So Allegra.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in here. You know, as we kind of stumbled upon last week, James and Ron and I got together and talked a little bit about this specifically. So I wanted to kind of share out a little bit from our conversation. I wanted to identify for the users, and this is something we talked about with James, for the users that are using college source tests, we do not store our military equivalencies in college source tests. And the very specific reason why is that there is not appropriate versioning of the courses within that platform. And for those of you who are familiar with those ACE recommendations, they can change pretty significantly version to version. That's not the normal cadence, but it is absolutely a percentage of the courses that have been reviewed by ACE will change very significantly version to version. And so I would just kind of highlight a caution statement on anyone who's using tests that they do not have a versioning structure that matches the ACE military guide. And from our perspective at Purdue Global, that's a deal breaker. We can't do our work. We cannot do our work accurately if we don't have the appropriate synchronized versions with what's actually happening with the ACE recommendations. It essentially means you can kind of only create one equivalency off of the military course for all time. And that is not how ACE intends it to happen or intends the data to be used. So that would be a caution statement. And transferology flows out of those same data decisions. So there's not a way to add that complexity in transferology. So we have typically just not used those. And part of what I shared last week was we use a homegrown tool. So our hesitation about the ACE military guide is really more about data maintenance than it is about the robustness or the ease of use of those tools. we have a homegrown tool that we built 10 years ago because College Source didn't have the right complexity. And because we maintain all of our data in that system, our concern with the military guide is simply that we would then have to maintain data changes in two different systems. So that's the position that we're in. And I wonder if other institutions are feeling the same way. It's not even really about like, yeah, I think the ACE military guide tools are great. The modernized military guide is phenomenal. I'm so happy that they've developed all of that stuff there, but we just feel kind of stuck because if we agreed to go that direction, we will have to double all of our work to make sure that we keep that synchronized with the tools that we're already using, because the tools we're using are plugged into automations within our SIS.
Okay. Let's hear from a few others.
I would have to agree with Allegra on that as well. Even the ACE guide itself, when they go in and evaluate a course, so they may evaluate the active duty version of an 11 Bravo MOSQ school, and they're going to list what Fort Benning has taught for that year. Well, there's 15 to 20 other Reserve and National Guard schools across the US that did not get evaluated, but people are going to that school and it shows up as a non-evaluated course on their JST. So if you go just off of what the ACE recommendations are, if you plug it in and use their tool, that student's not going to get transfer credit because that course was never evaluated by ACE. So you have to be really careful on what it is you use, what you look at for transfer equivalency, because of a lot of that stuff, it just won't populate on its own through the system. So it's still going to take somebody with a set of eyes that understands what they're looking at to evaluate that transcript for full transfer credit.
Thank you, Ryan. Dallas.
Ryan, if I could address that, Ryan's got a great point there, that there are certain trainings that, though they are similar, they're not evaluated. And at the same time, there are courses that the schoolhouse will say, this is the active duty version and this is the reserve version or the guard version. And those can get evaluated at the same time. And it happens occasionally, probably, and this is anecdotal because I don't know how many courses are out there. Probably better than 50% of the time when ACE does an evaluation, it is both the active duty and the reserve guard component, because the schoolhouse dictates what they teach out in the system. At the same time, the guard and reserve can create their own additional training on top of that. So that's a very true statement, an accurate statement Ryan's talking about. The challenge will be is like with Allegra's system, can those two systems talk? And I'm being told that they will talk. And so, Allegra, maybe you and I should get with ACE and see how they can talk. So that way you don't have to do a duplication if we go down that path, because that is the last thing we want to do, is increase the workload. And I saw your thumbs up, so great. I'll get with you next week on that, or later today.
And Morgan's got a clarifying question, if anybody can help with this. If courses fall under other learning, either non-evaluated and or timestamp has passed. Anybody know?
I will usually look for a similar course that was taught at the same time period. So you can look at, just going back to the 11 Bravo course, if one was taught at Camp Atterbury here in Indiana, but it was not evaluated by ACE, I will look and see what was evaluated by ACE for that time period, because TRADOC's going to send that same course out to everybody to use. So you could actually go and find a similar course in that date time period and utilize the transfer credit from it, if your registrar is willing to accept that.
Spot on. Exactly what I would recommend.
And then the follow-up question is, how do we communicate this to the civ sector?
So to clarify, real quick, if that's okay, I'm specifically asking whoever just made that comment, because I like that, the comparison training. However, are you relying on perhaps military background knowledge that you know, or like how do you make that connection?
I usually pull the similar course data from ACE and actually upload it with the JST or the transcript to show the correlation in the training from the time period. That way, if there's any question during an evaluation or a accreditation issue, it's in our system with that student's transcript. And if I need anybody from a dean to the registrar to approve it, that information's there as well.
Okay.
So an additional artifact that you can use with that is in the military, they have a appraisal system. So you could use their performance report as a companion to say, yes, they were in this job. This is the MOS. And this is what others in that career field had in the way of training at that same time. Again, further supporting that, yes, they did this training, it's similar training, and we can use it. And Morgan, I was thinking you were going to go in a different direction than that. So that's a good question. I want to expand it just a little bit more. In the civilian sector, there are jobs that are comparable to the military, and we can use ONET, Occupational Net, they have a military crosswalk. And in those civilian jobs, they can look at the military and say, we have the same training that the military's already evaluated. How would that work in our workplace? So we can fast track some of the assessments of military work to align it against what the military does to see where there might be pockets of credit recommendations instead of having to go in and do a full evaluation. That's where I thought you were going.
Any other input from any of the other institutions?
Laura had something posted in the chat. I don't know, Laura, do you want to speak to that?
I was just saying that like last week, I think I mentioned that we use TES. We just, with our structure and our budget, and we just got a new president, we don't know where things are going. So it's just almost impossible for us to keep, the multiple equivalencies and systems. And transferology is part of, I think, the college source product. So that is available for our students and prospective students as well. So.
Okay. Stacy, would it be helpful for your office to know, have a more in-depth understanding of which systems the institutions are using, each one of them, or because we could do a quick assessment, like 3 questions, send it out and have everybody come, and then we could bundle it all. So that might be helpful as you guys move forward.
Sure. And I agree. However, I'm going to put my colleague Jessica Barrett on the spot if she's still here. Because I don't know what they've done in the past with current transfer frameworks, if they're keeping track of that. Jessica, do you have anything to add?
I'm sorry. Exactly. I was not paying close attention. I was messaging somebody. Transfer frameworks in what sense?
Or the type of platforms institutions are using, like tests or transferology.
Sorry, I know some of the institutions do use tests, but I think, and Laura would be able to speak to this better. I think that several of the institutions that used to use tests that's kind of fallen off, but that's not something that we engage with on a state level because we don't absorb any of the information from those systems.
Okay. Okay.
So we could do a quick survey of the institutions to see what they're using. As far as I know, maybe a few of them are using transferology, but a lot of these, we had a statewide contract for transferology maybe like a decade ago, but we do not have that anymore. So couldn't speak to that, but it would only take a quick survey of the institutions to see what they're using, but most of them have representatives on here.
Right. Okay, because it would also help us as we're building out this repository that besides having the ACE military guide, maybe we can put some career source product resources out there as well. Okay. Let's go back. So, next, we're going to talk about the ecosystem hub, and this is just about, besides the framework and the program of military credit for prior learning, which probably fits in the middle of this bubble here. There are other factors and partners that are part of this. Higher education, what credit for prior learning, does. It increases retention, completion, enrollments. It builds this whole lifelong learners, and it expands programs. Then there's the business and industry side to this, that they require a skilled workforce. It also increases employee loyalty when businesses engage with colleges. Can you provide credit for prior learning for my current workforce? This is a question that hit us that we didn't expect when we were implementing credit for prior learning statewide here in Missouri, is we had businesses and industries becoming our bigger recruiter than our own recruiters at our colleges, because, well, not only, I have a whole workforce here in this manufacturing plant or in this hospital, and if they could get credit for prior learning from the training I've already put into them from the time I first hired them to now, and then they could further their career paths, and we can get them into management and things like that. So there's the business and industry, and then, it supports the whole defined career pathways, and it aids that company with growth as well. Our partners is, your workforce development boards, all of your veteran programs. I mean, every federal agency has veteran programs, and then, there's the Veterans Administration itself. So, they have the same desire, the same output to have a skilled workforce solution. Is, military credit for prior learning another tool that they could put into their belt? The same thing with the workforce boards, is they need to report on the veterans that they serve, that they co-enroll into their system. So this is kind of where I was at with that earlier data sharing discussion, is, people being co-enrolled in multiple programs, whether it's higher ed or public workforce programs or public veteran service type programs, how we can share data. And we all have these common performance goals, and that is to get them skilled up and get them back into the labor market, or to increase their chances of promotion within the labor market. And then there's the student experience. This is one solution that all students see, but, how can we make it appealing to them and digestible, that they understand, well, what I do have military training and certifications. I've never thought about that. I never thought about going back to college. But it does give them a competitive advantage. Other things that I've seen around the country, and that is colleges are sharing these employer-based lists that do have veteran priority hiring, and they're live. It's live data. In other words, you go into this system and you can see who's hiring these occupations, and then what colleges are supporting those occupations, training programs. So just the whole ecosystem is worthy to share with this group today if you missed this last year. So here's just a deeper dive into that. It talks about faculty and staff. They could become CPL certified. They are identified as CPL advisors. These are your coordinators. They come with learning objectives. The global access, the crosswalk inventory, the degrees that are connected to the occupations, and the evaluation review process. This is a whole nother big arm of a framework of a successful credit for prior learning. Here's your communities again. Here's your campus. Everyone on your campus, from your president to your deans and chairs, your admissions, your registrars, your coordinators, they all need to be, in the same framework, and we all need to be speaking the same terminology for your program to be successful. Then there's the governance of it, the regional programmatic accreditation, the state institution policies, the national standards that CALE has put out. And then, of course, your state support and the financing part of this, all the different types of state and federal military tuition programs that are out there, the scholarship opportunities, and then again with the employer support. So questions about that. Sometimes when we get in these work groups, we felt it was worthy today to just kind of talk about how it takes on, this whole program takes on a life of its own and just grows and grows and grows. So But typically when we're in that implementation stage, we're starting with you, the higher ed institution, and your staff, faculty, leadership, what it is, what it isn't, and then getting everybody around endorsing and supporting this framework, this program framework, this model guidance, and speaking the same terminology, which was when I was going through the assessments we did with all of you from June. In July, when I was doing the deep dive, and I went out and I clicked all of your links, and I was on so many pages on every institution's website. There's definitely a terminology breakdown. Some of you call it this, some of you call it that. So if I was a student or a business wanting to engage and make it a priority to hire veterans, or if I am a veteran and want to engage, and which school would I go to? It's kind of difficult in Indiana when you start searching those pages. So having this framework will benefit all to grow, to grow and expand this program. It'll increase access. It'll support transparency. Dallas, did I miss anything on the hub?
So, and I think we have one more slide. This is the overall CPL program. And we went even further and did it. Nope, I guess we don't. Okay, there's a deeper dive to this. So if we can go ahead and move back.
Okay.
As the CPL program, the MCPL is a further subdivision of that. So keep that in mind. That's why we're focusing on that right now. You see it peppered through the CPL program, but we're focusing specifically on the MCPL, because if you get the MCPL right, you'll be able to get the CPL right.
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
That's our dive, which then the next slide, of course, takes us to what is all of the CPL? What are all the things under that umbrella of CPL? And I think this picture really helps us to figure that out. Now, I do want to make one point. You'll see transfer credit is the first bucket. Okay. The way Kale looks at this, transfer credit is considered credit for prior learning because it's coming into your institution from another school. So that's prior learning at a different institution. So for our purposes, we're saying transfer credit is not something we need to address right now. What we need to address are the military aspects. And then as we get that correct, it'll allow us to do the proficiency credit, which is the next bucket that we see there. How we recognize the standard exams like CLEP exams and Sailor, Straighter Line, how we bring in certificates like Sec Plus, Net Plus, Google, AWS, Microsoft certifications, automotive standards evaluations, and then the pure CPL of individual assessments of portfolios. All right. Did I miss anything on there, Don?
Nope.
Okay.
Stacy, you have a question?
Question and maybe just a comment, really. So I think in Indiana, and Jessica again can speak to this, but we won't take time to dive today. But we have a head start in many ways in pulling in what with the military and other forms of CPL into our existing core transfer library, for example, because we already have AP and CLEP credits as part of that work, which, in this diagram are bucketed under proficiency credit. The other thing is that with this working group, I believe one of the deliverables or aspirations is to draft some marketing tools. And so maybe that's the opportunity to come up with that language that we're putting out there on our websites collectively to the extent we can to standardize that.
Yep. So thoughts from the group after viewing these?
Does this help to clarify?
Okay.
It must have.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the talking points, the next topic we need to cover quickly here. So this was the graph that was utilized that we felt would help last year for the overall umbrella of the CPL, the benefits and the whys. Why would your college engage, and why, and how to explain to other members on your campus. The whole terminology and understanding what military credit for prior learning is and what it isn't is a barrier, is a known barrier, and it's been in every research report written since day one. But it's one, and it's also a lot to do with turnover, but it does increase completion rates. The data now, there's enough data for the past 3 decades that does support that. It saves adult learners money, time. It improves retention, and its outcomes are true regardless of it's transparent, race, ethnicity, and income level. So those are common talking points. That's with whichever programs underneath the CPL ecosystem hub. And that goes for the same for the military. But what we'd like today from you is, after looking at the broad program talking points, share with us what you see as benefits for your military program and how it's been successful that we could put in as talking points that possibly you've utilized in discussions you've had with internally at your institution or even externally. I know that, and I'm just going to keep talking till I see some hands raised, because I shouldn't be, Dallas and I should not be talking this much, but when we go around, I see other states that on their websites, they have used these infographics. In other words, this college has rated this, and like in Indiana soon, you're all going to have, hopefully soon, your Purple Star Collegiate rating designation that'll go on your site. But they've also used, we've enrolled this many military veterans with Indiana veterans. And this many have completed, this many have gone to, and they've used those infographics. So as a student that's looking to engage, it looks successful and promising. And they're very robust programs. So Morgan, you're using the MIL guide for talking point. Explain to me what the MIL guide is. Dallas, are you familiar with the MIL guide? Military guide for ACE. Oh, the ACE website.
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
AMG. Yeah. But I would really like to hear Morgan talk about how are they using it as a talking point? Who are they engaging, and who are they talking to? Staff, faculty, both, registrar, transfer services? You're on the spot, Morgan, and you're muted if you're talking.
Hey everyone. So my name's Morgan. I'm from Purdue. I'm currently getting my oil changed, so that's why there's some background noise. But we have been using, yes, always. We have been using the military guide as an awareness tool, and just as a way to, as soon as you introduce anything new, there's all these, oh goodness, this is going to be X amount of work. This is going to be a huge lift, all this stuff. So we're really just bringing awareness around it right now and gauging comfort. But we're pitching this specifically to those that at Purdue, it's a little bit different. There's a credit eval office, and then there's a situation where students have to show their JSTs to like department heads. So we're pitching it specifically to department heads to show them how accessible information around the JST can be.
Great way to do it, because I'm going to make this answer for you, but I need for you to acknowledge that it's true. Once they see information from the guide and from the course exhibits, it helps them to make a decision quicker and more effectively. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I think that I'm learning that, and this may be an extremely small in the weed nuggets, but under the first section of the JST is military courses. We probably all know that by now. However, most times the first label is blah, blah, blah training. So there's this, there's this earnest effect of trying to, give due credit for the military transcript, but then the word training shows up as a course. Does that make sense? So it's like
Yep.
military training as a title of a course. And just because of that nomenclature and the lack of knowledge and the pressure to just to, move fast and keep moving, I think that right there is just a clarification point we're trying to make right now.
Yep. Great point. Great point. James, saw your hand up. And then we're going to come back to Laura, because Laura, I like your comment.
Yeah.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is what you're looking for, but at Butler,
If you
we
can lean
just-
into your mic just a little bit, because you're hard to hear.
Better?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And my microphone switches between my camera and my laptop for random reasons. So just let me know if I get quiet, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is what you're looking for, but at Butler, we just started our first undergraduate degree completion program, which was designed to allow students to come in with either an associate's degree or 60 college credits completed and then earn a bachelor's degree in 2 years. So it's kind of new ground for us. But specifically, we have been advertising that military experience can help count towards the 60 required credits. We really thought this program would attract a lot of folks with associate's degrees. Our first cohort has proven otherwise, where we only have, I would say, about 10% of our first cohort has an associate's degree, and the rest of them are just bringing with them at least 60 credits in college experience. But 2 of our students actually were able to use their military experience to get to that 60 credit threshold. So we have 2 students, and it's actually the first military CPL that Butler's ever was awarded to these 2 students that just started with us. So
Fantastic.
Mhm.
Fantastic. How did you guys determine that you wanted to do a completer degree that way?
I'll be honest, it's a great question. I just hit 90 days today at Butler, and this program was developed before I arrived. So that is, I'm not 100% certain on how we landed on that.
Okay, let's talk offline a little bit about that, because there are 2 schools that are using it fairly effective, and your program sounds very much like theirs.
Yeah.
Actually, 3 schools: University of Louisville, Eastern Oregon University, and University of Memphis. So
yeah, I'd love
let's
to talk offline. That would be great.
Yeah, and MTSU.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. Laura, you had some comments in there.
Yeah, so I guess like our university, we had a small task force that I think kind of went with, I think Dawn, you said like the previous task force that was with CHE last year, kind of creating the overall CPL framework. And so what came out of that was our faculty senate voted to make a subcommittee for CPL. And I'm trying to kind of work with them now to bring in military with that as well. So and it is like brand new, because we didn't really have much of a framework for anything before. So it'll be very interesting. Like I'm looking to see what can I use from here, what can I use from previous to really kind of get this ball rolling, because I know for at least for my university, faculty are very, very skeptical of the CPL. So
Which is why it's important that we create talking points and spend time and constantly have this out in front of them, so they can embrace it and see that it's really an advantage, and yeah, that's a common barrier that we see. I'm going to add down here at the bottom is the military medical corpsman to practical nurse. This is a program that's specifically marketed for military. And it's in, I think, 7 colleges in Illinois, Joliet, DuPage County. But it is an infographic. They have it on their website, along with many other programs of study, where if you are coming from this branch of the military and you have these, it's like a crosswalk. but it's in a real simple infographic. So I'm going to share that. I'll find that and send that out to everybody so you can take a look at that. But for someone, and it took like their top programs of study that the military were enrolling in and where they were putting these credits. And then these colleges enter into a transfer agreement, and they're all supporting this and then marketing this as a tool to that military population. These are all these programs of study you can get done in 6 months, for this PN, and for the RN, it's 8 months. If you have these military, so it's almost upfront telling that potential military affiliated student, where their success is going to hit. If they come and talk and then just seek with an advisor, then it has a pop-up form. But I didn't know, I was just thinking, is this something that, and it sounds like, James, you guys have got your first cohort but it is something you're looking at, is transfer credits coming in, whether it's an associate's or military, and how they can further complete a program of study, with a degree, which is only a win-win for everybody involved. It puts that, and then there's jobs on the backside of this that are connected with the college that, they're hiring for these degree positions. So that's with Joliet Junior College, DuPage, Illinois State College. It was like 7 institutions in Illinois that are starting to identify specifics. So I can look at you, James. Yes, ours is a BS in organizational leadership. And James, do you market that? I mean, specifically to the military?
That is the plan, not specifically to the military, but they are one of the, I would say, lack of a better term, funnels that has been identified. This first cohort was not directly marketed, I don't believe so, but that is something we're looking into.
Okay. And Morgan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to share because, faculty, it is a part of this military credit for prior learning equation, right? And so one of the things that we have done is we just start with section 3 of a joint service transcript and make some awareness around, hey, there's a whole section on the JST that is transfer credit. It's actually not credit for prior learning, it's transfer credit. And that has really opened the door for us to, well, what else is on this JST? Because we don't know. Right. And that has been probably one of the best, I guess, angles to take when approaching specifically faculty. Something that we have done is we have just, we've asked our students, hey, you want to engage in this project, let us know. Please submit your JST to us, yada, yada. And we have specifically pulled curriculum from military course section on the JST and compared it to like university core curriculum or college specific core curriculum, compared the two using the military guide, and made that case to the people that make these decisions. And making that awareness around it, they're more open to the discussion because in a way you've kind of done the work for them, right?
Yeah.
So Morgan, did you get a chance to see the webinar that we did for the Collegiate Purple Star on the AMG? It was the Lunch and Learn.
She responded, yes.
Yes, great. Do you think that's helpful or would help your staff? It's more targeted towards staff, but faculty can benefit from it also.
I think, so for our campus, I thought that would be an excellent tool for our advisors.
Good. Yeah, that's where it's targeted. There's another one, demystifying the ACE evaluation process. I think we might, Stacy, need to look at doing that as a lunch and learn. Steve, if you're on here, I think you're on here too, because that targets faculty members to say, this is how it's done. And that could be real helpful.
I agree. And since I'm off mic, Morgan, you made a point in the chat too. A talking point for the student is to salvage some of their education benefits instead of spending it. Could you just speak briefly to that?
Sure. So like as a recruiting tool or as like when you're having conversations with prospective students, when you're able to show them that their credit for prior learning will be evaluated at your campus, what that actually means if they're intending to use like GI Bill benefits is perhaps they might not, use all 38 months of their GI Bill benefit. Perhaps they could, save 10 of those months so that they could then go to graduate school. It's just a different picture when there is a consideration of, well, at our university, because of your prior for credit learning, you will be further along your plan of study at our university. And so that's something that we are always interested in, is how we can bolster, hey, come to our university versus this, because we'll get you this further along on your career path. And then also it just helps with that retention and furthers that accessibility to you too can go to graduate program, PhD, master's, et cetera, et cetera.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so if as a homework assignment, if you all could email to us specific talking point language, and I'm going to take some of it that I've looked at here in the chat, but because we'd really like to build out, an ambassador talking points just around the military CPL, specific for Indiana institutions. So email each of us, Dallas and I together, or I'd put it here in the meeting chat even after this, 1 or 2 statements that you utilize at your institution in Indiana. And we'll put this together for future review. Okay, so we need to move along. So the Google site parking lot items. This is what we have in the parking lot for now. I know that we've, the glossary of terms, we've got 3 of them, I think, now that we'll be looking at out there to place in there. We'll be working on the implementation guide, the checklist for the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. The Indiana directory of everyone. That is something that I think we could put as a topic point, as a resource for, I would suggest maybe for the next meeting, but I've got a couple I can show you how other states are doing this. And they're using it on their own site for, a contact and reference point at each institution. So you can work amongst yourselves without us putting together. Thanks, Dallas. That's great. Yeah. The online community of practice and discussion group admissions office toolkit is something that we talked about that we see in the future, but also then, just faculty and staff toolkit. And so I think this is where these ambassador talking points will help with both of those. The registrar's standards, of FAQ, an Indiana-based military CPL FAQ, and then any additional professional development needs, and those will keep coming. We'll keep populating it with that. So Ron, a helpful way to build out that trust is to act as the Rosetta. Yeah, Stone. We absolutely work with faculty and they make the decisions, but a big part is translating the language into academic. That's awesome. That's a best practice. Yeah. Yeah. Are there things that else that maybe that now that we're 3 weeks into this, that need to go into that parking lot? We were pretty robust in the first couple of meetings, but today, now having these discussions today, is there anything that we need to add to make sure that nothing gets lost as we move forward?
I think going maybe along with the admissions toolkit, I don't know if you said this, is probably some sort of advisor toolkit as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good point. And that's, I think where we put that was, we talked about in the last meeting about the culture, what military, working with the military, advising military and understanding where they came from in their environment and speaking in military terms with just admissions office staff and them understanding it and how to apply it in the higher education, environment. So yeah, cultural awareness. Okay, great ad, thank you. So for next week, we're down to 2 minutes. I'm trying to get this under so you can start your Labor Day weekend. So topic areas for next week. We've talked about the military guide today, other program resources, institutional sharing, the talking points, and the guide. Next week, should we take a look at tackling some occupational crosswalks and the directory of program ambassadors? We did also kind of touched on some interactive tools, but not much. The marketing tools is probably, we're going to spend a big part of, I think, September in that arena. James, did you have your hand up? Did I miss that? Okay.
Nope, just a thumbs up.
Okay, great. All right, so why don't we go ahead and we'll get started on the directory of program ambassadors, and then we'll take a look at occupational crosswalks. I've got samples from around the country, but we also have, I think, Kelly, didn't Ivy Tech do some for the military, or was that just the 10 occupational crosswalks that we did post-COVID?
It was just the post-COVID for the
Post-COVID,
business.
yeah.
And I don't think it actually got fully adopted. I mean, but I don't know.
Yeah. So I can share some that I have found, that are specific for this student target populations of how they're, marketed as well, since we'll start on the marketing tools and branding. We'll start at the end of our meeting next week and then probably dedicate the next 2 meetings to those. Is that good with everyone? Okay, I'm seeing everybody shaking their heads. All right. Well, that's all that we have for today. So you've got your homework on the ambassador talking points. Email those to us. We'll send a soft reminder of what that question, what we're asking for. And then the agenda, just to prepare you for next Friday's meeting. Meanwhile, I want you all to have a safe, healthy, and relaxing Labor Day weekend. I don't want anybody working on Monday. And we'll see you all next Friday. All right.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks.